I thought it'd be fun to take a look at one of my favorite shows today when it comes to lighting, the Peaky Blinders, and just discuss a little bit how they might have done things, and then discuss a little bit about how we might do that same type stuff with our equipment, our speed lights and our monolights. Alright, so here we are checking out a scene from the Peaky Blinders. I checked into the whole fair use thing of this, and I believe it's okay for me to use this in my video, so you guys can leave a comment about that, so it's kind of like open to interpretation. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about this and look at what they do here. One of the things I noticed they do in the show is they use these dark backdrops, like wooden paneling or whatever it might happen to be, kind of dark backdrops. And they really control the light on the subject and on the face especially. So you have kind of these moving highlights. And it's really just beautiful. And you'll notice they really control the light, meaning they're not spilling it all around. So we're going to talk about some of the ways I feel they might have done this. You know, they're using grids or barn doors and all this stuff to sort of control their light and not let it bounce around the room like we might do, right? It's almost the exact opposite of what we do. We try to make our light go everywhere. They're trying to really isolate their light and light up their subject here and make it really, really stand out on the background. So it's a real focal point. It's kind of a pockets of highlights, you could call it. It's a great way for them to do stuff. And it's just another way for us to kind of discuss and admire what they do and just maybe mimic that in our own work if we have to one day. Let's have a look at some of the ways they might control light. Like, of course, they're using a lot different lights. They're not using speed lights. Of course, they're using constant lights, and they're huge lights on movie sets. They're just gigantic lights that can usually go way up in the air, and they point them down at the windows so they can shoot all day, right? They could even shoot into the evening. But anyway, the philosophies are generally the same. Like for example, a grid, they would just put a grid over their light if they wanted to have a grid effect. Okay, it's the same thing for us. So why don't we start off by talking about Snoots. So Snoots are actually really simple devices. Of course, this is a homemade one, and you can get manufactured ones. I'll try and throw up a shot on the screen of that. But a Snoot is just essentially something you can wrap around your flash, and now you have this more confined way to control your light. And I'll go ahead and throw an example up on the screen of what this would do versus a normal shot without the Snoot, okay? And as you can see, when we have that on there, it just tends to confine that light, and that's the pattern you see on your screen right now, what this guy will produce with this on there. A Snoot might be useful if you want to go ahead and say attach this, especially in a bind. I tend to use grids a lot more than Snoots, but if you wanted to attach this and go ahead and say you wanted to like light up the side of a flower pot, like the flowers or something, and then the rest of the light is just shooting off into the distance, not really doing much, you could use a Snoot to do that, and it wouldn't affect you wouldn't affect your other scene as much, okay? It wouldn't affect everything because you're just shooting that light right where you want it, but the rest of the light is just kind of going off and not being used, okay? So it's a really good way to kind of control your light and put it right where you want. So as far as what you saw in that little Peaky Blinders clip, barn doors would be something that they'd use on probably every single one of their shoots they do on the interior. So they'd want to really control that light, like they'd get their lights on the outside of those windows, maybe up high and pointed down a little bit. And a lot of times light would be spilling over onto a wall or whatever it might happen to be. And they could just go ahead and grab a barn door, which will probably look quite a bit different than this, but I just have an old speed light here with some Velcro on the side, and I got some Velcro in here, and they could just block out that light from wherever they needed, right? The top or the bottom, it could be. Whatever direction, they could put it also on all four sides if they really wanted it to have it like that. But usually they're just blocking the light out from one, maybe two sides, something like that. So that's a barn door and really useful. All right, and lastly, we'll talk about grids. I got a few grids here for my monolight, and as you can see, these just come off of here, and I can put in another one. This one is finer, so we'll go ahead and show you later what this does. This one just has larger openings, and it's called a 60-degree grid. We'll show you what that looks like. This one has really fine little openings on it. It is called a 20-degree grid, and this one has, I guess, in the middle, and it's called 40 degrees. So I'll show you what each of those look like as I talk about them. And then this here is a grid for a speed light. You just go ahead, and these again are really cheap. You just go ahead and attach this like so, like a little Velcro piece. They gave me this, so it came with the grid, and then you're just able to attach it like so. So grids are something that are highly useful for us. I recently used one on a bigger job, and you can see that on the screen right now, the photo I used it for. I think of the pattern that grids give, they kind of give that tapered pattern. I think of it like a brush in Photoshop. They're just such a beautiful tool, and it's so interesting how we use these brushes in Photoshop, these really soft brushes to do all the stuff we want. And then when we're out in the field, the coolest tools for us to use and the easiest and the best looking tools are tools that have also a really soft edge, okay? And this pretty much, depending on where you point it in your scene, but it's just like exactly like a soft brush in Photoshop, where the light is just tapering off so beautifully, so you could put some really kind of hard light onto something and without it really being identifiable, because it's such a cool taper as you're looking at it in the scene. And of course, on the set of Peaky Blinders, I guarantee they have these all over the place. So don't make the mistake of thinking these grids are just for these little speed likes like this. So we've got this big softbox here, and you know, it's pretty big for us anyway. And if I had to guess, when I look at Peaky Blinders, I see these really controlled like columns of light coming into the rooms. And if I had to guess, I would say they have larger light sources than you think, and they do something like this. So this is a grid for a softbox, right? So we're able to get, you know, relatively soft light anyway, I'd say to some extent. I'm not gonna take the time to put this on perfect, but as you can see, we're getting a softbox size light here, but we're also getting that control with the grid. So this will just help us shoot it more straight out. It won't be spreading out as much everywhere, all over the place. So this is something I would, if I had to guess, again, I'd really say they use on the set of Peaky Blinders. Large light sources, but still gridded.
Close your eyes, only